More cowbells. More cowbells. Wrong way, Lou Rufino. More cowbells. And remember, in all those Saturday Night Live skits, the psychotic one, Christopher Walken, would look at that camera and scream out, more cowbells, more cowbells. But talking about being sociopathic or a pathological liar who is involved in killing people. All of a sudden, we've had a flip of the script. Number one, Justin Ellick. I really want to give a beat down to James Flippin for having locked me out of the studio at the very start of the show so that he could do the news unfettered, uninterfered with. Boy, we're going to have a blowout here at WABC. He and I, that's an absolute outrage that he would not let me dissect and bisect his news at the top of the hour. And then I noticed you went right to Bill O'Reilly. Totally excluded me because I'm the only one here at WABC who's talking about the Gilgo Beach killer, Architect Rex, again. And the last time I went through all of this, at a certain point, when I was blaming Suffolk County police and crooked politicians out in Suffolk County who came marching in here, Peter King with the Nassau County Police Department, they wanted me to buck, bow, apologize, retreat, surrender, or face excommunication, expulsion, or nothing more, suspension. You remember that, Justin Ellick, executive producer of Sid Rosenberg in the Morning. It was intense, but it turned out that I was correct about the excavation of Architect Rex's house in Matza Pizza Park, which for years had been home to Roy DeMeo, who was responsible for over 200 people getting killed in the Gambino crime family, and, of course, Carlo Gambino, the head of organized crime. Never mind all the serial killers who were from Nassau County who would then drop their bodies off in Suffolk County. So now we're back to square one. So because others have avoided talking about Gilgo Beach, we are going to revisit it. How could you have two next-door neighbors of yours who see things totally different about you, see you in a different light? This neighbor, when questioned in the last 24 hours, made it seem as if Architect Rex in Matza Pizza Park is like peace, love, and happiness, maybe the second coming of Gandhi.
Geez, I don't know. I never seen Rex as a violent person, to tell you the truth. Yeah. So, I don't know. For the sake of the kids, I hope they don't have the right guy.
Yeah, you hope they don't have the right guy. He's the right guy, all right. He just hasn't been implicated in more of those dead bodies that have been found all over Suffolk County that are probably the result of his murdering frenzy against women who were prostitutes and how they were dumped in all different positions along Ocean Parkway in Suffolk County between 2010 and 2011, that led to almost nothing being done by the Suffolk County Police Department, that was not cooperating with the FBI, was not cooperating with the state police at that time. I mean, we were talking about corruption central. The band Blue Oyster Cult that played that song to begin with actually was organized. Everyone went to Stony Brook College, which was up on the Long Island Sound North Shore. And if you take any of the roadways completely south, you would end up right before you hit the Atlantic Ocean finding so many places that body parts, whole bodies have been disposed of by serial killers from throughout Nassau County. But to go back and suddenly begin a dig while Architect Rex's wife and two kids are away in South Carolina suggests there's a hell of a lot more to this story. There hasn't been a completion of this story. And investigators from the Suffolk County Police Department, the State Police of New York, and the FBI continue going through all kinds of personal items and spending a lot of time in the basement and the backyard. Now, here was another neighbor, next door neighbor, who saw things completely different about Architect Rex, this serial killer.
He would burn his garbage, and I would smell it, and I would always wonder, I'm like, why is this guy burning his garbage again?
Now, you know damn well if you're living in a place like Massapequa Park and you're burning your garbage, there's all kinds of 911 calls going in. It turned out when we did the deep dive over a year ago, there was no record of 911 calls about him burning garbage from any of his neighbors in Massapequa Park, in Massapequa in general, and you know that that would have had a direct impact on property values. You know, people, when you looked at the kind of house he was living on, the porch, which looked like it was a scene out of the Beverly Hillbillies, you know damn well there should have been a lot of 911 calls of complaints. And when Nancy did the deep dive with Nassau County and they tried to determine how many 911 calls there were because this guy was like misbehaving and clearly was operating in a very suspicious manner, we determined that there was almost none. And here is that neighbor a year ago saying how he would see Architect Rex actually digging holes in his backyard.
When I was 18, 19 years old, I heard digging in the backyard next door. Now, I really wanted to go and check out what it was and like look through the fence. The fence had little fake grass on it, but something stopped myself from doing it. I was nervous. I wasn't too sure what I was hearing at the time.
Wrong way, Lou Rufino. I want to hear that again. So this guy would go out at night, surrounded by neighbors, one-family homes, two-family homes of great value in Massapequa Park in Nassau County. And you mean to tell me this is the only guy who was complaining about this and saying anything about it or calling either the town of Massapequa Park or Nassau County itself and complaining and lodging 911 calls or 311 calls? When you look at the records, they've been scrubbed. I want you to hear again, this was his neighbor a year ago describing how Architect Rex, the serial killer, would go into his backyard at night and dig holes.
When I was 18, 19 years old, I heard digging in the backyard next door. Now, I really wanted to go and check out what it was and like look through the fence. The fence had little fake grass on it, but something stopped myself from doing it. I was nervous. I wasn't too sure what I was hearing at the time.
He was nervous. He didn't hear what was going on at the time. And so a year later, notice, the authorities returned with a warrant, and they're telling the folks who live on his block in his neighborhood that they're going to be there for the next few days.
He kind of, filled us in on what was going on and what they're doing, and they got a search warrant, and they're gonna be here for a few days. And I said, how long? And they said, we really don't know.
You really don't know. And then another neighbor who says that the town and people in the town, they're kind of upset that this trial of Architect Rex has been delayed because they'd like to see it all go away. I don't want to see it go all the way until all the dead bodies are accounted for in terms of who is responsible for their demise.
I spoke to Chris the other day, the son, and he told me that they were very upset that they delayed the trial.
Yeah, the family might be upset. The wife, who I think was complicit, who had knowledge about what her husband, Architect Rex, was doing, happens to be in South Carolina with her two children, Christopher and Victoria. Architect Rex is housed in the Riverhead Correctional Facility. That's the Suffolk County lockup. And he's been there since his arrest of July of 2022, almost a year ago. Remember, the last time they were combing through the house and basement at the family's property, they found a concrete gun vault where Architect Rex had stashed more than 300 guns. And when I brought that up for question with the Nassau County Police Department, they said, how the hell could the guy have 300 guns there without people having knowledge of that, without people having complained about it, without there have been some kind of a search of his property prior to that, particularly since some of the people felt that his maneuvers, that him roaming in nearby parks and coming on to women, was almost like pointing a finger at himself. And if I remember correctly, the search at that time extended to a nearby storage locker, with the coppers at that point looking for body parts. So now we got to resume this entire situation. Because when I brought it to everybody's attention, boy, did I get big beef and big grief, especially focused around James Burke, who had a charmed life in the Suffolk County Police Department. When he was a sergeant, while in uniform, he was having sex with prostitutes in patrol cars that were marked. He was running all kinds of con games and financial scams. This had all been reported to the brand new county leader of Suffolk County, Bologna at that time, the Democrat, and he chose to do absolutely jack diddly squat nothing about it. Absolutely nothing about it. And that's because there was so much traffic down and around that little compound along Ocean Parkway, not far from where the bodies of the prostitutes were found, the four, almost back-to-back, belly-to-belly. And yet a little further down, there were other body parts, and those crimes have yet to be determined. But I went on record then, because Bologna is no longer the county executive, as to say that he had been seen in that compound along with Burke, who was the police chief, and other politicians and cops going in and out of one particular house, which local people said was like at the epicenter of sex trafficking. And they would bring these girls in from as far away as Jersey City, Jersey, Connecticut, the Bronx. They would Uber them in, and then they would spend the night or they would spend the day, and men would come in and out of there, some very prominent, some very well known. There were 2 suicides that had taken place almost simultaneously. In Riverhead, by a guy who was responsible for the building of the biggest hotel there and was considered the biggest developer in Riverhead. All of a sudden, while this was transpiring, he put a gun to his head. He killed himself. Then over in the South End, there was another individual involved in all this activity who also decided to take a gun to his head and blast himself into the hereafter. We had a brand new district attorney who picked up the ball on this, and we had a brand new police chief who had come in from New York City. He since has been washed out because he was snacking on some of the female police officers in his command. But it seems like we've gone full circle, and all fingers are pointing at Architect Rex. And you got to say to yourself, wait a second, you spent so much time a year ago combing through all of his personal items. And I continue to ask this question that nobody in Nassau County nor Suffolk County will answer, is how could a guy have been living in a house broken down as it was in Massapequa Park, which is a high-end area where there's a lot at stake property value-wise? I know, just having grown up in Canarsie and Brooklyn and in other neighborhoods, that if anyone had diminished property, if anybody was doing things to their property that might cause other property values to plunge, that immediately there'd be all kinds of calls. And so we're going to have to go back to doing the deep dive. Nancy will join me tomorrow, Thursday, and we're going to find out why there were never listed complaints against that house of Architect Rex, his wife, and his 2 kids. Why is it that both in Nassau County, in that massive bureaucracy, and in Massapequa Park, there were no reported calls of people complaining, if nothing more, about him burning garbage at night, digging holes on his property, and not doing any kind of repairs to his property, which obviously had an impact on everybody else's property. It would devalue it. And also, where is this investigation going? Because there are other unsolved murders that were the result of people being dumped in Suffolk County. So I really believe that if you happen to be coming in on the Southern State, if you happen to be coming in on Northern Boulevard, if you're coming in on the Grand Central Expressway, there should be a certain point, Justin Ellick, that when you hit Nassau County, particularly you on your way to Jones Beach, that there's a big sign that says Nassau County, home of serial killers. Because there probably have been more serial killers in Nassau County per person, per square inch than anywhere else in the country. And then once you make it to Suffolk County, as you're heading to the east end, that there'll be another big sign there that says Suffolk County, the dumping ground of the body parts and bodies of the serial killers of Nassau County. Is that something we could do until we completely resolve this? Because this came out of nowhere. And it hasn't been discussed here at WABC, and our news department is spending very little time talking about it, analyzing it. And I don't know about you, ladies and gentlemen, but this is exactly what I was saying a year ago, that they wanted to slam jam, thank you, ma'am, this entire case, blame Architect Rex for 4, and then lights out, put it to bed, and say we've done our job, pat each other on the back so hard they got to go for a chiropractic adjustment. And pretty much absolve everybody who was involved in keeping a hush-hush, mush-mush, dirty secret about what took place in Gilgo Beach and, more importantly, along that area of Ocean Parkway. I can assure you we are not taking the code of Omerta on this on the Rip and Read.